welcome to the first episode of Recluse Horror. Basically, this is going to be a horror movie, usually movie, review podcast. Just a little background on this project. I started on my birthday of last year writing a horror movie review and watching the movie every single day. This episode will be, though it's the first of the podcast, will be the 268th review that I've done every day in a row. There have been some short films in there and a couple of different things, but for the most part, it's all been horror movie reviews. I've liked doing the written reviews, but they are very time consuming because I get a little anal retentive and then I have to make myself step away from them. I have tried to build a website on my own, but it's very time consuming, especially considering I'm dedicating about 4 to 5 hours a day on watching the horror movie and reviewing it. I decided a podcast might be a little less time consuming if I slap it together. Because this is my first episode, and probably periodically in other episodes I will have someone with me. Today I have Sam. He is a friend of mine, and he is great. Sam, say hi.
Hi.
So, today we watched, it's January 1st, at least it was when we watched the movie. So we watched New Year's Evil. We should have watched it yesterday, but it was New Year's Eve, so let's be real, we were drinking. So, how about we talk a little bit about you? What's your favorite horror movie? Do you have a favorite horror movie?
My favorite horror movie would probably be The Shining, which is barely a horror movie. Instead of just a weirdo movie. Mm-hmm. Stuff that's probably more classically considered horror, and especially B horror, which is mostly what you watch.
Yeah, it
would
is.
Probably
I watch
be
a lot.
Ghoulies 2.
Ghoulies 2.
And probably, I don't know, probably something else too, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Maybe Chainsaw Hookers? What was it? Hollywood
Chainsaw Hookers is really good.
Sam has seen a lot of these with me. We hang out a lot. Personally, my favorite horror movie, again, in some ways probably barely a horror movie, is Rosemary's Baby. It's directed by Roman Polanski, which, there's not necessarily the greatest guy in a lot of respects, but his work is fantastic. Mia Farrow is phenomenal, and coming off of Peyton's Place, which was a very different sort of role for her, she thought she might end up getting typecast, and so she really wanted to break away. I thought that was a really fantastic movie. So that's my favorite. That was basically just an icebreaker. New Year's Evil. What did you think about it?
Considering what it wasn't too bad. It had a lot more promise than I think it filled out with. Like the final product, seemed like it could have been a little bit better than it ended up being. There's little parts of interesting stuff or cool visuals, but then it doesn't go anywhere you would want it to go. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun. I think it's one of those ones that mainly appeals to nostalgia. Not that that's a bad thing. It's very fun. This is, by the way, New Year's Evil from 1980, so it has late 70s, 80s feel up the ass. It's really incredible in that way. The costumes, the makeup, it's all very period and very well done. So basically, the premise of the movie is a woman who is sort of like a television personality slash, I don't know, maybe disc DJ, I don't know what you call those anymore, like an MTV VJ sort of thing. She receives a call on her show saying that this person who calls himself evil is going to kill a member of her friends or family every hour at midnight in whatever time zone in the U.S. Until, I don't know. He doesn't actually say until whenever, but he's just going to keep doing it at midnight. What did you think? What did you think about the acting?
It was fine. It was passable. There's some weird stuff in it, but
there was, yeah.
But some of that worked for the movie, it being weird.
Sort of added to its own sense of humor.
Yeah, it's lack a sense of humor.
It's lack of,
but it's still pretty funny.
It's bad humor, but it's still a sense of humor. Yeah, it's dumb, not bad as in bunch of jokes that don't really land. They don't land because they're cheesy. I thought the beginning, the acting was sort of a little bit rougher around the edges. Maybe it just took a little bit to get into the feel of what they were trying to do. It did start very strong. The intro had this great song called New Year's Evil. I assume it was written for the movie, though I didn't technically check. And then about 7 minutes later, they play it again. And then another 5 minutes later, they play it again. They play it I did stop it to check. They played it 3 times. At least 2 verses 3 times in the first 15 minutes. The first time they played it all the way through. And it was really great, but then they overplayed it. I think in the movie there was at least 4 plays all the way through, 3 in the first 15 minutes. So that was a little bit too much for me.
Get used to that song.
Yeah. It is good, though. I mean, again, it's very period. It's like sort of like punk and roll, sort of, as I recall anyway, rock and roll, punk and roll, which was fun. And they show this, the opening scene is of our heroes. It's a bunch of punks piled into a car going to this New Year's Eve event that, Blaze, the lead woman, is hosting. And you never see them again, and it's like such a heartbreak. They play that song, they're cruising, they're in their convertible car just going down the street, and you see them twice in the rest of the movie, I think, after the first 2 scenes, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it's the movie I wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And then but instead they just disappear in the movie.
Yeah. I really hoped that would come back in some way, and it really didn't. So the antagonist called himself Evil, probably the best name that has ever graced a movie, right?
Yeah, so
it's fantastic.
So
and
good.
Her name is Blaze, of course, which, the names are kind of silly. It's
not the lead.
The lead actress. Yeah, her name, the lead actor is Blaze.
Yeah.
She's a really bad mom.
Yeah, she is.
She's a really bad mom. They show a couple of scenes of her not really. I did like the sort of elaborate plans that were in the movie, like all the different ways that this person is planning to kill people, and I don't want to get too far in depth with them, but did you enjoy the pageantry of the antagonist and what he's trying to do and how?
No.
No?
Not really. It was funny. That's one of the funnier parts. The killer has, like, elaborate plans to do certain things, or these killings, but, like, they don't matter or really make sense. Like, he could have done the same thing without any of that.
It's true. Yeah, it is true.
So it's funny to see that happen in the movie and think that it has no consequence. Like, he could... Like, the killer is unknown to anybody.
Right.
Nobody would know them.
Right.
So they wouldn't need to be in disguises. They get in disguises. Spoiler alert. Yeah. They're in disguises the whole movie.
It's very elaborate. Yeah. It also, there's a little bit of, this stuff doesn't always bother me, and it didn't really bother me too much in this movie, but there is some weird procedural stuff, like police procedure, where they're not doing things that police officers, yes, even in the 80s, would be doing things differently. But it's not of real concern, and eventually they usually do something somewhat right. So it's definitely not the worst that I've ever seen. Did that bug you at all?
It didn't bug me too much. It didn't make a ton of sense some parts.
Yeah.
But a lot of it didn't make a ton of sense necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
No, but it didn't really bug me.
Okay. Yeah, I think my only other direct note on this movie was that I really missed the guys from the beginning, the people in the car, the punks that
Yeah.
were there. It felt really weird because they sort of kind of set them up to seem like characters, and then not entirely, but kind of, and then just
At least side characters.
at least side characters. Yeah, I expected that to come around in some way, and it really didn't. And it's fine, but then they did cut to them a couple of times, just the lead punk and then some girl that was in there. But that was pretty much it. And he's the only one who had any lines at any point. None of the other people had lines except for yelling. They were just yelling garbage nonsense.
And he only says 3 things.
Yeah, it's not very much. The music in the movie, did you enjoy the music overall?
Most of it.
Yeah.
There was some really good stuff, especially at the end. Mm-hmm. Some like weirdo, like 80s synth.
Yeah.
Stuff. There was some other stuff that wasn't quite as good. That was just a little more cliche. Mm-hmm. But some of it was actually really good.
Yeah. But personally, I thought it was really neat. And again, it's sort of one of these time capsule movies where, like, it's very indicative of the period of time that it is. It's really fun. They had, on this New Year's Eve show that they're doing, they have these live bands. I just barely, very quickly tried to find out if those were real bands at all. I don't think that they are, but they have real people up there that are kind of fake playing stuff. At one point, it's clear that the band is not playing to the same music that is really.
I don't think it's supposed to.
No. And same with the crowd. The crowd is not dancing to the same music. Yeah, that's right. That is another thing. Is the crowd. Do you remember the weird, what's it called? The weird fake low energy mosh pit thing that they had going on? Do they understand what mosh pits were like in the 80s? Because that's not, I mean, I guess it was 1980, so maybe they weren't quite so bad. I know 81, 82, they were pretty serious. The whole thing takes place in LA on the Sunset Strip, in that whole, LA 80s culture. So, do you know if in 1980, if they were that bad, if they were really as energetic and violent as they were by 82 in like DC?
I couldn't say, but they weren't as bad, and these were like glam rocker punk, type,
slightly goth.
Yeah.
Some of them, many of the men wearing makeup. Wearing, the very heavy, like, David Bowie style blush and, eyeliner and eyeshadow and stuff. But yeah, the crowd was kind of weird, I thought. Not in a bad way. It was kind of funny.
I thought it was awesome.
Did you? Okay. Yeah. I loved seeing the crowd, like, the costumes in the crowd. I think that was, like, the best use of it is, like, just getting to show off a bunch of, like, period costumes. I mean, and it's funny because it almost felt like it had a sense of itself in that way. It felt self-aware of just the whole aesthetic and how this encapsulates our time right now. And I don't think they realized how much of a time capsule necessarily that was going to be because they're not time travelers. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Did you have anything else to say about the movie specifically? Or the ending? Did you, without, spoilers?
I think the ending, like, not that the ending was even bad. It was actually a decent ending. I just think the pacing of the movie really hurts the movie. I feel like if they edited it a little differently, added a few more things here and there, did actually have that B story with other people, it would have made the movie feel like a whole movie opposed to like part or half of a movie, and you wouldn't have gotten so tired of it.
Flagged.
Yeah, it starts off so promising.
It does. It really does. That intro with the cruising.
Yeah, you're really in
so
there.
Good.
You're like excited to see what the punks are doing for New Year's or whatever. You get to the studio and you're like, oh, some stupid show's happening. This is gonna be amazing. And then it all just kind of like drifts off from there. And there's some high moments and low moments, but they're mostly low and the same.
Yeah. Personally, and you had mentioned this while we were watching it, the pacing of the movie as a whole is pretty good, but by the end, it takes so long, or at least so much longer, it feels so much longer to get through the last bit of the movie, like the third act or the full resolution of the movie, comparatively to how the rest of it played out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think I think what the problem was, they stopped using the music as filler in between sections. They had all those bands playing in the beginning, and they would have, they would have them play 2 or 3 verses, something like that.
Yeah, it'd be like a minute in between scenes.
And they would, they would still be storytelling, sometimes with visuals with no audio, having, showing characters being worried or whatever backstage. And then the cut with the dancing and
a lot more transitions.
There were a lot
more stuff like that, and really, that was really the interesting part of the movie.
It was, yeah, that was the best part of the movie.
And when that stops, it gets really dry. The end's still good.
Yeah,
like it's still a good end, a lot better than I would expect.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I feel like I think it was a mistake to stop using the bands towards the end of the movie to transition and to fill time, because that was, I thought, a really excellent way to fill time in the beginning. The movie is about, if I remember, it's 1 hour and 26 minutes, which is right there at that line. But if they hadn't had that, they probably would have had to add another 10 minutes of material, possibly more. And they, by the maybe the last 45 minutes of the movie, I would say they didn't have any more bands playing, or if they did, it was just underneath stuff while other stuff was going on. They didn't have any specific, we're going to cut to a band time. And I think that would have broken up the end if they put one band in there playing a really, either a really catchy, really high energy song, or a very well-known song, but I'm sure they couldn't get the rights to it. This was definitely a B movie. I thought it was very good. I thought they used the locations well. I thought the sets looked pretty good. What did you think about the sets? Did you feel like it was missing anything? How about the effects?
I feel like everything they did and what they had was done really well. Mm-hmm. For a strictly B movie rating, I'd say it's probably better than average. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but it just falls short on a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. The ending does get a little, for me, there were a couple of parts that could have been a little more clear, and I don't know if this is too big of a spoiler. I think it's too much of a spoiler. I think I'm going to quit. I'm not going to say it. But yeah.
It feels like the movie loses focus.
It does.
I don't know if it was during shooting and they're just like, we don't know what to do anymore. We don't have enough stuff to film.
Yeah.
We thought we had more footage than we did. Let's just cut it together. But it feels like the movie gives up a little bit.
Well, and I actually was going to mention this and I forgot. So thank you for reminding me. But there's a kill that happens off screen.
Yeah.
And that felt like maybe... specifically that felt like maybe it was lost footage.
Yeah.
They do mention it. They don't, just completely forget this character, but they just lose it. Were there any big plot holes that bugged you a lot throughout the movie?
No, not really. I don't get bogged down too much on plot holes and thinking of the logic especially of this movie.
Right, yeah.
But
it knew it was cheesy. It knew what it was doing.
Another like good analogy for the movie. It kind of reminded me of like Terror Vision,
yeah,
which is another one of my favorite horror movies. Like a not as good version, like a bad version, really.
Yeah,
with the same like aesthetic and era, styles. But definitely not as funny, definitely not as good.
And it also seemed to have a sense of itself as far as, like, the period, the era, and
it just wasn't as
it.
Good as Terror Vision.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. But it was pretty good. I honestly, my opinion, just based on, I don't do star ratings or anything like that. I think that's too limiting. I think it really depends a lot on your perspective whether you'll enjoy any movie. I thought it was fun. If you like slashers, if you like 80s movies, if you like 80s music, if you're just one of those people who really likes the nostalgia factor. And I would hesitate to call this a horror comedy, but it is fun, if not funny. Is there anybody that I didn't mention that you would suggest the film to?
It's just anybody who likes weird B movies, anybody who's into like punk nostalgia, like any weird
punk,
stuff like that.
Glam,
like anything like
punk and
that
roll.
would be interested in it. I do star ratings.
Yeah,
I give it 29 stars on my rating.
But is it one of those ones where you don't say how many stars that it's out of?
It just has 29 stars.
It just has 29 stars. That's fantastic. Okay, so 29 stars from Sam.
Do we want to talk about the cast at all?
Yeah, if you have the cast.
I looked it up on IMDb because a few of the faces seemed
familiar.
Roz what was in Happy Days. She was Fonzie's girlfriend.
She was Pinky Tuscadero. Yeah. Oh my goodness! I'm so glad you looked that up because she did kind of look familiar.
The nurse. There was
one of the other characters. Yeah.
She was in Galaxy of Terror.
Oh, Galaxy of Terror. She was. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that. Galaxy of Terror. I reviewed that, and Sam actually watched it with me as well. I reviewed that in text a while back. It was not my favorite. Although it did have Captain Spaulding. Was there anybody else in the cast?
Yeah, there is actually.
Oh wow.
Sally. She was one of the characters in the movie. She played a smaller character in the movie. She was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as Rose. I'm pretty sure she was one of the girls that Jack Nicholson snuck into the into the mental institution. And she was in Death Race 2, which I didn't see, but I do want to see. And there's a couple other movies on her IMDb that I've either heard of or watched part of. She was in a few things, like she was Under the Rainbow. She was in 2. I'm trying to look at some of the other characters, but I'm not. Nobody else I recognized offhand or that they looked familiar. Other than those characters.
I can't believe I didn't recognize Pinky. Well, I mean, I didn't watch a ton of Happy Days, but I mean, she did seem vaguely familiar, but yeah, as soon as you said that, I knew it was Pinky Tuscadero before you even said Pinky. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Just a lot of B-movie actors, even not even B-movie actors, but actors that had been in other stuff. You know, a lot of them were B-movie actors. Other ones had other smaller roles in bigger films. So it's interesting. The movie's interesting in that way. Yeah. Even if it's not a very interesting, even if you're not very interested in the movie, it's interesting in that way.
And I looked up before this. I looked up the director and the screenplay writer. I did not find anything there that was. They've done stuff.
I didn't look at it.
They've both done stuff, but they were not. Not stuff that I have seen. Yeah, that one sounded like something you might like, the 9 Deaths of the Ninja.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, Sam might be interested in that.
I'm 100% interested.
Okay. Okay, so I guess that's all we have to say about that movie. Not bad. Mostly nostalgia, fun slasher, blah, blah. Okay. Okay, so, beyond this movie, I just wanted to very briefly go over some of the things that I have done written reviews about, starting with the one that I did on my birthday, VHS Viral. I did this one. I realized that it's the third in the VHS series, but I had already seen the other two, and one of my personal rules about this is that if I rewatch a movie, I can't remember like plot details or anything like that, and I had only seen those two movies like in the last year. I think the 2016 I saw them. Sam has also seen this one. So what did you think about VHS Viral?
I remember almost nothing.
Yeah,
about it, so I could rewatch it. And review it.
You could review it under my rules. Yeah. Okay. I remember The second one, VHS 2, was awful.
Yeah. It was a little bit better. I remember liking it a little bit more than the second one.
I know one of my big hangups, and this, to be fair, I do have a little bit of a bias against this in general. The special effects were done, they were CG, and they were not good. They were awful CG. For VHS Viral, they moved back to doing mostly practical effects, and I think that really helped them out. It's more time consuming and probably more expensive, depending on the effect. So I understand the necessity of using that, but it's just so bad. If you have bad, special effects CG, don't use it. It's not worth it. Another thing that I really liked about it was the use of technology. I didn't expect, just because of the title, that they would use the technology well. I thought it would sort of feel shoehorned in. But it didn't really feel like that to me. What about you?
I don't remember any of it. Remind me what segments there were. There were 3 segments.
Okay, quick sidebar. I didn't mention what the movie was actually about. VHS, the series it's a series of vignettes, like horror vignettes that are sometimes related, sometimes not related. Done by, I think they're done by completely different directors every single time. Not positive. Some are better than others. The third had some interesting ones that use technology. I mentioned off air, one of those uses of technology. Did you like that one? Did you think that was interesting?
Can I say what it is, or are we?
We should probably not say specifically what it is. It's just a little bit...
That was the better one that I remember.
Yeah.
It's just like a zombie one. Actually, I think all of them are zombie ones on that one.
Are they?
I feel like they are.
It's been a while. This was 200 and what did I say? 268 days ago, I think.
But I think that's what made. I think that's what made the viral even somewhat interesting. Mm-hmm. Like for me, I like the first one. Mm-hmm. Parts of it because it's in
the last one segments. Was so bad in the first movie, though.
Overall, I still liked it better than the second one. I thought was the worst one by far. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that made the third one more interesting is the way they use technology to tell a story. Like, they're kind of the focal point of the movie, which in that way makes it interesting, opposed to just the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not one of the things that I know I noted in my review was that it's not very creepy. There's some inventiveness, I know, in a couple of the vignettes, but not as much creep. In the first movie, the first VHS movie, I have a particular fear that I'll probably get into at some point. It's a pretty common one, I think, for women, but it preyed on this so incredibly well. There were 2 of them that kind of did the same thing, preying on that fear in the first movie, and I was genuinely creeped out. I do not get creeped out easily. I have seen a ton of horror movies before I started doing this project as well. Horror, like a lot of people in high school, was my absolute favorite genre for a long time. I kind of got away from it. Not due to anything specific, just, there was other stuff. There's been a lot of good sci-fi TV shows and stuff coming out, and movies now. So yeah, I just kind of got away from it. And that's kind of why I started doing the project to begin with, was that I wanted to spend more time getting back to those roots, those horror roots that I had. And also, I had a problem with not watching new horror movies. A lot of the stuff that I would watch would be... My favorite era of horror movies generally is probably the 60s, as you might have guessed from my Rosemary's Baby favorite horror movie and movie, actually. And so the to digress, the first one did have a couple of things that genuinely freaked me out, despite my pretty high tolerance. This didn't have any. To be fair, most of the movies that I've seen in the last 268 days or whatever haven't either. But yeah, I kind of hoped for something like that. I think this one was a little more on the inventive side and less on the scary side.
More on the gore side too. It's really more of a
true.
gore movie. At least when you add up all the different segments. It's more gore oriented, and I think probably that's another reason why I enjoyed it more than the second one, because it wasn't doing a bad job at trying to be scary. It was doing an okay job at being gory, and
that's true.
That's a little easier and a little better to watch than just failing at not being like a horror or scary or
Okay, so the second one, which again was the second review that I did, and Sam has seen this one as well, was Sinister. Yeah, that pretty much is. This was a suggestion from a friend of mine, also named Sam, actually. And I think the reason specifically that I didn't like it is because I've seen The Shining. I like The Shining. Sam, have you seen The Shining? Your favorite movie?
Bunch of times, yeah.
Yeah, might have seen it 35 times. I might have seen it with you probably 5, 6, 7 times. So, now mind you, it is not the exact same story, but there are many, many, many parallels. If you haven't seen that, maybe it's great. This is the sort of movie, for me specifically, that is the reason why I do not appreciate modern horror movies. And I know that sounds like a harsh criticism, and perhaps it is, but it has very high production value and very little of substance to me personally. There are some pretty dark moments in the film. Do you remember any of those at all?
Not really. No, not. I pretty much did not remember the movie until you brought it up to me.
Right.
And then I was like, yeah, I've seen that movie with that generic name and that generic plot.
Yeah.
And I rightfully forgot about it and never really cared about it after I watched it.
Right. So basically, this story is a little, it parallels The Shining in that the lead character is a writer with a family, and the family is holding him back from his career, which, whatever. It's a very common trope. It's not one that I particularly enjoy. You can do both. You can take breaks. You can take solo trips just to work. There are ways to make it work. But it's about a true crime writer, in fact, that moves with his family to a town where a gruesome murder an abduction has taken place in order to work on a new book about the case. At least I'm pretty sure that's what it was about. It was sort of hard to tell because the lighting in this film was so bad. Do you remember that? How it was? Well, it to be fair, full disclosure, me and Sam both have really, really crappy old TVs. So when things are lit too darkly, we can't see them. If we're over here, no, it's just not happening. So, this film is probably, in all of the time that I have seen, in all of the movies that I've seen in this time, this is probably the worst use of lighting in that way. If you have a nice backlit LED TV, I bet it wouldn't be a problem. But I have a really crappy TV. I am poor, and you should be able to see a movie if they put it out. I mean, even on my laptop, I think the movie was really dark. And that's, an HD screen, at least. It's not backlit, but yeah, it wasn't the worst. The acting was okay. Ethan Hawke plays the lead, and whatever your feelings about him, he's usually okay at playing sort of brooding, not high personality characters. Would you say?
I thought it was really good, if I remember right.
Sinister?
Yeah, no, that movie's terrible. Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke was
I
really
thought
good.
it was really good. I thought most of the acting was pretty good.
Yeah.
Even how implausible
Yeah.
it is, and how many dumb lines they have them say.
Yeah.
I always felt like these people were dumb in saying them.
Right.
Like, I thought that was really good, and there was some really good shots.
Mm-hmm.
It just falls to the that new style of the darker the movie is, the scarier it is.
Right.
Oh, you can't see anything? Must be scary.
Yeah. I mean, and if you're seeing it in the theater, of course, it's not going to be well, I hope it wouldn't be a problem in the theater, at least. But, in this world, in this market, and this movie came out in 2012, which would have been, that's streaming era, right? Mm-hmm. It's maybe the beginning of streaming era, so maybe they didn't necessarily know. But, I mean, there was still a home market. There were still DVDs, in 2012. There might have been Blu-ray. I think there was Blu-ray in 2012. So it really, that was my biggest, I think my other biggest problem, you remember Ethan Hawke has about an hour and a half of unshared screen time by himself. His acting is good, but he is on screen by himself with nothing.
So long.
Mm-hmm. So, that's it's an hour and 50 minutes, which is not brief in horror. It's not overly long necessarily, but the story doesn't really give you enough to warrant the extra time. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, there's very little
mm-hmm.
to the story. A lot of it's just Ethan Hawke
mm-hmm.
Talking to himself. It's like if The Shining was just Jack Nicholson sitting there drinking and talking to himself without even that bartender to talk to. Just right. Him sitting there, because Ethan Hawke is also an alcoholic in the movie.
That's right. Yeah, he is.
One
of the other parallels.
So he sits in his den, he drinks, he talks to himself.
It's Scotch because he's a writer, right? And this is a writer trope, right?
Probably.
I bet it is.
But that's what he does in the movie for most of the movie, and
mm-hmm.
he's actually really good at it in it.
Yeah,
but it's
a
just
good character
too
for
little
him.
for too long.
Yeah. And again, it's him all by himself. He has almost all of the movie all to himself.
I almost feel bad for Ethan Hawke when I watch the movie.
I get that. He doesn't deserve that.
Someone save him.
Yeah.
Get in there.
Anybody get in there.
Let's do something in the movie to save Ethan Hawke.
Mm-hmm. There were definitely, I noted before, I don't have any specific memory of this myself, but I noted before that there were several scenes that could be entirely removed or re-edited in a way that wouldn't affect the story, and maybe even made the story harder to predict. It was very predictable within a certain parameter anyway. And the foreshadowing was incredible. There was so much foreshadowing on this that it was impossible by the end that you couldn't have guessed the ending. Did you feel that way watching it?
Of course it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
a very obvious movie.
Yeah. There were a lot of jump scares in this movie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I did too.
Added jump scares.
Uh-huh. I am not a particular fan of jump scares, especially if they're just done with no creeping, building, anything. They just come out of nowhere. That, to me, isn't frightening. I usually don't even physically, jump or startle when those happen in movies. In real life, you'll scare the shit out of me. If I got my headphones in and I come around a corner and you could be standing in the room the whole time and I will almost walk into you and freak out. But yeah, the jump scares.
It's comically put in there almost.
Yeah, but it's not played for humor.
It's not played for humor, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, they're hilariously bad.
They just add them in the most obvious places. If you're even thinking of
mm-hmm.
oh, this would be a real lame place to put a jump scare, there is one there.
Yeah. There's also all of the characters are very stereotypical. We've already mentioned, obviously, the writer and the alcoholic and the held back by his family. But everybody else is also really stereotypical.
They're barely characters.
They are barely characters.
I don't remember any of them being bad actors or anything.
No, I don't think they were.
But the characters were, wife, daughter.
Yeah,
son.
wife, daughter. Mm-hmm.
And that was their character. They did nothing else.
Yeah. The mother was British, and that is about as different as these characters got from regular characters. That was about it. There wasn't really much of a plot hole problem, I didn't think, with this movie, but that's probably because this movie has such heavily treaded ground. It's been done. This story has been told 50,000 times. So, I mean, if they had seen any of these movies, not just The Shining, there's a lot of other examples that are more similar to other aspects of this movie that have just done this before. So they're like, okay, well, don't do this thing because it creates a plot hole, because we saw it when they did it in this movie. So it's not clever, it's not frightening, and it's not cheesy enough to be enjoyed on any of those levels. It's just kind of...
the fact that the actors are competent and, somewhat good almost ruined the movie for it to be hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If they were bad actors, that actually might be really funny. Yeah, that's true, actually. I think the best way to describe the movie is unremarkable, which isn't, of course, the worst thing a horror movie can be. It doesn't offend your sensibilities. Maybe if you're an alcoholic writer, like Stephen King might have a problem with it. I think he's in recovery, but whatever. Or recovered. It's shot. The cinematography is pretty good, with the exception of the lighting problems, which were so bad. I remember being really irritated by that, but the cinematography was really good. The production value is good. The effects were very good. I think they were CG.
Yeah, they were all CG.
But they were pretty good CG.
They weren't bad. Mm-hmm. They didn't overuse them. Like I said, what do you need them for?
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke talking to himself in a dark room.
Right. Is there anybody that you can think of that might enjoy this movie, other than somebody who hasn't seen The Shining?
If you're just into modern horror a lot, like if you're into that style, I could see you wanting to watch it,
Yeah.
It's there's so many other better movies that do the same thing.
Yeah.
But if that's just what you're into,
right,
you could watch it. But I maybe someone who hasn't seen The Shining.
Yeah.
100 times like I have. I don't. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah.
Loves Ethan Hawke. If you love Ethan Hawke,
yeah.
This
is a great movie.
It's probably a great movie to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's good in it. He's
good in it.
That's the weirdest part. Out of everything, that's the weirdest part about the movie.
Yeah. I would agree. I think. If you're an Ethan Hawke fan, absolutely. This is definitely a good movie because, like I said, he's got about an hour and a half of an hour and 50-minute movie to himself. And again, this is a role that he does very well. So, if that's your thing. But there's really not anybody else. If you haven't seen The Shining, go watch The Shining. Just go watch it. This is... It's just not good. It's just not good. Did you have anything else? Any final things that you'd like to say about it?
No, that's it. About The Shining. Wait, I'm sorry. What movie were we talking about?
Sinister. Yeah.
No, I don't have anything else to say about Sinister.
Okay. I know for this one I didn't bother looking up any of the people attached to the movie that weren't actors because it was bad and I don't care who they are. I think they might have been attached to some really Paranormal Activity or something like that, but I'm not sure for sure. So I usually try to look up something about the people unless the filmmakers and the actors, unless it's terrible and I don't care and I don't want to think about the movie any longer, which is I think how I felt after I did that one. So okay, that was Sinister. I guess that's about it for this episode. Sam, did you have any specific things that you would like to plug or?
Yeah, for my new podcast, me talking shit about Sinister. we'll have a new episode every day. We're just gonna, run into the ground.
Right. Okay.
No, I have nothing going on ever.
You should make a podcast where you just watch Sinister every day.
Every day for a year.
Every day for a year, just Sinister, over and over again, and review it the longer it goes on, and see what that does to your mental state. Yeah, okay, that's Sam's new podcast. I will provide links if they are there. I think that'll about do it. Thank you, Sam, for being with me on my first episode. I was legitimately super nervous, and I think you helped a lot. Maybe Sam will be back tomorrow. We'll see. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe wherever you found us. There will be social media attached at some point to this project. I plan to have a Facebook page, a Twitter, possibly an Instagram, and whatever. But I don't have any. I don't have any right now. You can find a YouTube channel that is Recluse Horror, which is mine, but I haven't done anything on that because there's no possibility of me doing video at this point other than just uploading this podcast as a video with just a picture. This has been Recluse Horror. This is a daily podcast, so please come back tomorrow. If you liked this review, please share it with your friends and so forth. If you have any questions, you can email me at reclusehorror@gmail.com. And thank you for listening. Samuel, any final words having not to do with movies? Or
No, none.
None? Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everybody.
He might be back tomorrow.